Good morning, everybody. I hope that you are doing well, and thank you for joining me. This is going to be the second video for the Real and Raw series. Sorry it's taken me, whatever the correct lingo is there, a little bit longer to get this video out to you all. I've been contemplating, what direction I wanted to take these videos, what the topics were, when to address certain things. And Spirit has once again shown me just to be in a state of flow to what comes next. So, on a spiritual level, if you trust the divine flow, you trust the divine process, everything comes to you in the right time. And here we are. So, I don't know. It was the collective video that I did yesterday. And this I'm going to tell you a little bit about it, and then we're going to jump into this and where this is going. And, it does speak of the traumas and things, even codependencies and whatnot. And I apologize for the odd angle here compared to the norm. Your gal here pulled a calf muscle somehow and has it propped up with a heating pad per the doc. So there we are with that. I think we're getting used to my issues at this point, right? Anyhow, so yesterday when I posted the video, I talked about the collective video. I talked about the fact that my dog had a toad on its back. Then I caught her with a box turtle. And so after I finished that video up yesterday, I walked outside to check on the turtle to see if it had left yet, and it had not yet at that point. And I went to walk around the side of my house, and when I did, there's a car that I'm unfamiliar with that's in my driveway. And there were two ladies standing there. One was a third one was getting back in the car, and there was a fourth one in the back seat. And I looked at this lady and I said, can I help you? I'm very Scorpio, very territorial. What are you doing here, and what the hell do you want, right? And she said that they were Jehovah's Witnesses, and that they were coming, canvassing the area and wanting to talk about their, I guess, sermon or congregation they are having this coming Sunday about the wars. Ultimately, the question to it was, will we ever have peace? And she talked about the Ukraine and the Russian war, and we talked about our beliefs, and there's me being the Scorpio that I am, and they're, I guess, biblical, and I'm going, well, I do tarot. So you can imagine the looks that I got in that regard, but, there's the shock factor, and I kind of had to giggle about it because that's me. But, I stood there, and of course, we have to have open dialogue. We have to respect each other's viewpoints, and they were very kind and very respectful and asked me to join them this Sunday, and I said, we'll see. I don't think I'll be able to make that, but we'll see. And because of prior obligations, not because I wouldn't go just to go to have the experience. So the key point to the statement was, will we ever have peace? So, I don't talk too candidly about my personal life. I do share experiences with all of you, and I think, again, part of doing this job, if that's what we want to call it, it's not a job for me, I love what I do, but this work that I do collectively, is that the experiences that we have help to shape, shift, and give different viewpoints to different people that, whether they're not alone or, the emotions they feel are not something that no one else has experienced. I guess it's the same thing, not being alone in it. But, I've said it before and I'll forever say it. I didn't get here because I got shit right. I got here because I fucked shit up royally in my life to have to learn those very valuable lessons. And I think for the, not knocking any other sign, but Scorpio does have a very unique path in life, a very unique course where they have to be comfortable with that death and rebirth cycle. So with a lot of Scorpio in my chart, I've seen it firsthand, and in talking with a lot of you, I've seen the same thing. So, there's truth founded in that. So this morning I got up and I'm sitting there doing my morning thing with my tea, and that whole conversation that I had with that lady replayed in my mind, and Spirit says, will we ever have peace? So last night, as I say about being candid with my own life, if you're a parent, you'll get this. even a step parent, right? You'll get this. Family dynamics, you'll get this. I have had a very, very difficult and tumultuous situation with my co-parent for many, many years. We're talking courts, we're talking lies, we're talking things that you only read about in someone else's life, right? Just mind-blowing how things played out over the years. So to date, there is a session that we join every couple of weeks, or supposed to anyhow, to just kind of keep things even-keeled and so that communication is good. Or at least that's the goal, right? That's the goal. I'm not saying we always get there, but that's the goal. And I had that session yesterday. And it was volatile as fuck. Has been for a long time. And the reason I bring this up is it led me to this morning. Where do I want to go with this? When we talk about trauma comes from sometimes what we don't see as trauma. You know, the word narcissist gets thrown around, but it's ultimately people in general. They don't have to be narcissistic. That they don't respect your boundaries. They enjoy control over your life. They need to feel empowered. You know, I can tell you that years ago when I made the choice to leave that situation, and had, you know, warned that person of that for a long time, that I was fed up with a lot of things. You know, when you finally do make that judgment call, and I think for a lot of you, and I've heard it, you know, in the personal reads that I've done, and I've seen it just in general life too, and I've said it before, we tend to leave things emotionally long before we ever leave things physically. And for Scorpio, if you're a Scorpio or have those placements, when we get to that point, and I've said it before again, right? When we're done, we're done. There is no return to that. And what I didn't realize entirely over the years were the amount of the traumas that were building and how toxic that dynamic had become. In that, there is no peace, right? We're talking about peace. Now, when I talked to those Jehovah's Witnesses yesterday, they're talking about big war peace, right? Will the world ever see peace? And this morning, it dawned on me that question posed to me yesterday wasn't about the way, again, our human perception, like when you listen to these tarot readings, mine or anybody else's, you may go into it with one thing on your mind, and what it ultimately means is something very different. It's in a completely different area of your life. Let's just say relationships. You know, we as tarot readers on YouTube say, you know, don't, place it where it fits, discern the message, cross-watcher might be you, flip the roles. You know, those little I'm going to call them cheesy disclaimers to the situations. But in reality, when you flip things very differently, you know, maybe you're watching a love reading for you and your person. But I've said in mine, love isn't just that person. This could be your mother, your father, a past relationship, a co-parent, right? It could be lots of different things. Your neighbor down the street that you talk to on a regular basis. So when that question was posed to me, will we ever have peace? I realized that peace wasn't about the world. It was like Spirit sent them as a messenger to say, where is your peace? Where are you lacking peace in your life? And in my co-parenting dynamic, there's not been peace in that since day one, truthfully. Before my child was ever born, there was disruptions. And then add basically in-laws to the situation, that just created more problems. So I had this session last night, and in this session, I'm used to being told that I'm crazy, psychopath, fuck you, you name it. Those things build up over time. So if you've dealt with anybody, doesn't have to be a co-parent, who has labeled you, called you names, fought with you, told you you weren't good enough, that they have a right to know what's going on in your life, you can't make decisions without them because you've made a mistake before in life. The one thing I can say is, and again, something else I've been very candid about was the domestic violence. Yes, I went through that. Yes, if you're here, spiritual, right? Like, that we relive patterns until we figure it the fuck out entirely as to the root cause of how we got there to begin with. And so during this session yesterday, he kept saying, well, this past situation. You're going to be dealing with a lot of people right now that are caught in the past. You think about some of the race stuff, right? Well, way back in the day, there was slavery. Yes, but do we have it now? We cannot hold everybody to the past mistakes that they've made. People change and evolve, and part of this for you to understand, if you're dealing with somebody like this in your life, is that they know the version of you before you've separated yourself from something, right? If you've not kept them in your inner circle, and you're here, and you're evolving, and you're growing, and you're trying, and you're holding yourself accountable, and you're looking to make your life better, that person most often doesn't have the right to your internal process. Well, nobody really has the right to your internal process. But they also don't even maybe have enough of a daily idea of who you've become throughout your trials and tribulations. So they have a very fixed idea of either who you are or their perception of who you are, not who you actually are. And I remember saying in some of the videos before, you have to remember that every single person you've ever met in your life has a perception of who you are collective. There's a million different versions of Nicole to all the millions of people that I've met in this life. Same for you. So when we're dealing with these people on a closer level that have this perception of who you are, who they want you to be, because then if they can make you the bad guy, they're now the victim. And if you succeed and you're doing well, and I've said this for Scorpios, and I've heard other readers say it, Scorpio, you constantly have something or someone or someone's, right, more than one, keeping tabs on you, watching you, peering in on you, wanting to know what you're doing. How do you do it? Why do you do it? Why don't they have access to that anymore? You can't ever get away from it. And again, it's a very real thing. So over the years, right, real and raw, very real, very raw, even for me. Talk about putting myself in a vulnerable position. Again, courtroom battles, stalking, harassing, all kinds of things. Insane. Ended up partnering up with my abuser when it was said and done. That's how despicable the level of behavior, the low that we would go to get our way. So I've been feeling this energetic pull to do some personal work on that level of my life. And maybe right now, as I say this in spirit, thank you, you're being called to do the same. You're like, you know what, that happened so many years ago. That thing, just let it go, let it be. But there's still an energetic tie. And, we talk about these eclipses right now. They are eclipsing things out of our life. And maybe it doesn't happen the day of the eclipse or the day of the new moon or the day of this or the day of that. But the energy tone has been set to make those changes. Thus, here we are. Right? They've got to play out. And again, everybody really truly is on their own timeline. Some things you have to have an experience with. Some things, there are things going on with the other people around you that certain things have to play out before you can meet and break these ties. So yesterday, the shit show goes down. And I won't get into all the details of it. It's really irrelevant in a lot of ways. But the name calling, the fit throwing, the projection. And this person has played a very big role in my ability to refuse love in my life because of the repercussions of me bringing anybody into my life based upon what the likelihood and action of this person taking would be. So when we talk about fear, what are you fearing? Right? When she said, will we ever have peace? The opposite of peace is fear. It's war, right? Pardon me. And I got to thinking about that very statement again and realizing what I feared the most was someone else being collateral damage to stuff I really had no control over in a lot of ways. That if this person wanted to hunt a new person in my life down or stalk a person in my life down, that's what they would do. It had been exhibited in court of what they had done. That they would go to no ends. There were no bounds. There were no limits. You know, just using the legal system as a form of abuse, financial abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse. Abuse doesn't just mean you got punched in the eye. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't sit there. So for the years that I dealt with this situation, that fight and flight response kicks in. Years and years and years of it. Now, many of you are fully aware of my health situation, the medical terminology of MS being tied to it. And I asked the doctor when I was there, there's no history in my family of this. How the hell did I end up with something like that? And we went through the medical ideas first, of course. And then we got to the end and she said, and honestly, Nicole, given all that you've been through, there is scientific research that now backs that trauma and stress can create these autoimmune diseases. I lived in pure terror and stress, fight and flight every day for a good 3 years. 3 years. Because of the stress. Because of the things that were being done. Because of the things I had no control over. The things that I had to experience. Now, whether that's the Scorpio life path or that's just part of my soul's contract, I'm sure it is. But there was something that I came here I had to figure out in this life. And then ultimately getting, again, back to yesterday, I got off of that call and I felt like a weight had been lifted from me. Again, I won't go into the specifics of why, but I felt like I could breathe for the first time in as long as I can remember, this person being in my life from, you know, the turning point of things weren't so pretty anymore. I felt relief. I felt peace. I felt assured that this struggle is now over, and not maybe because this person disappears and poof goes away, because co-parents don't just go away, right? We know this. But the ties that bind, the idea that this person has control, or thought they had control, they never really did, or if they did, it was short-lived. It was just enough until I could find my bearings. That this no longer exists in my reality. We give our power to people. Spirit, common day. We give our power to people without even realizing that we do. And that compounds. And that becomes bigger stressors, which becomes bigger codependencies. We're looking for self-assurance, validation, assurance from others. That we're not fucking up something anymore. You know, you got somebody constantly telling you every time they talk to you that you are a terrible person and you've done all these things wrong and you'll never get anything right, and you need to check in with them. They need to okay anything that you do. Anything that you do without their permission. You can't make good sound decisions. And what does that turn into for you? Self-doubt. You lack confidence, you lack the willpower, maybe the drive, you get in your head, you overthink, you don't sleep, you don't take care of yourself. All because someone else said, you fucked up. You made a mistake. Well, of course we made mistakes. You know, as they say, right, people who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. Well, let me tell you about the mistakes on that side, right? But we won't go there. But guys, the point to all of this is, you know, again, back to the, will we ever have peace? Peace is not just on a global scale. And, you know, and I think that, again, not trying to be political, but you look at the memorial service that happened on Sunday for Charlie Kirk. Whether you agree or disagree with the speakers is irrelevant. They came in there with love in their hearts, and they spoke. There wasn't rioting, there wasn't fighting. They were trying to find a way through the pain of their experience. We need to humanize everybody, even people who aren't so wonderful, okay? In your eyes or your opinion or perspective. They're not so wonderful. And there are people in this world that just aren't. But peace starts within us. When we realize, when we're doing the shadow work, when we're holding ourselves accountable, when we're realizing where we've given our power away to things, peace is found in that. It starts with you. What causes war? Whether it's a war on a global scale, country to country, whether it's a war between you and a family member, whether it's a war between you and yourself. Where does that come from? Where does that start? And a lot of it is conditioning. A lot of it's what we're told. It's behave this way, do that thing. Be all of that. Do all of that. Don't back down. Not backing down doesn't mean going out to hurt somebody else. In any capacity. It's to hold integrity. It's to hold dignity. It's to hold value. It's to hold moral. It's to hold ethics. And it's, really asking yourself who you are and who you want to be. And if nothing else, in the middle of all of the shit that I went through years ago, even when things were horrible, false reports, all kinds of stuff, I never wavered in my integrity. I never took that low shot, that low blow to that person when I had plenty of opportunity. Especially when, like you could say, right, with Erica Kirk, this man killed her husband, killed the father of her 2 small children. And in front of a nation, she stood there and forgave him. Because in her eyes, and if this is her belief and it's well respected, she didn't want to harbor any hate in her heart because she believes in heaven and hell. And she believes her husband is in heaven. And in order to be there with him, she can't harbor that hate. So in her eyes, regardless of our viewpoints on it, her harboring that hate would only keep her tied to a place that she didn't want to be tied to or doesn't want to be tied to. She found love and grace in her heart regardless of how much it hurt. That's strength. That's courage. That's bold. That's bravery. So every time that I had the opportunity to put the screws to this person or do something that could upend his world, I made that conscious choice not to. And I'll say, not just because that's not who I am, but there's also a small person involved in the middle of this. It's always about their best interest. But it spoke to me personally, right? My integrity, my belief, my heart, who I was choosing to be, the path that I'm choosing to walk. And it's not to be malicious, it's to heal. Some people, lead a horse to water, you can't make them drink. They'll never get it. Some of them, they'll get it after a massive tower moment in their life. Maybe. It's choice, right? It's free will choice to make that decision. But our peace doesn't come from external sources, even after trauma. We have tools. Spirit is saying we have tools at our disposal, such as therapists or counselors or maybe tarot for you, right? Spiritual guidance that lead us there. And as I've always said, over the years, and I'm not, not saying this from a space of ego, people have said, you don't know how much you've done for me. I didn't do it. I come here with a message. What you take from that message is for you to decide what you do with that. I could tell you anything at all. But what do you take from it? What do you implement? What do you change within you to make your life better? You take your traumas, you take your situations, you take back your power, and then you decide what you're going to do with that. Give yourself all the credit in the world. So anybody's ever told you, you fucked up, you made mistakes. When I got with the person that ultimately abused me physically, and in all the other ways too, when it was said and done, that person wasn't that person, at least not then. At least that's not what I saw, until he made mistakes. And those mistakes cost him severely. And even after that, I wished him well and love from afar. Because how much misery and pain do you have to be in that those are the things that you do? Not holding on to a victim mentality either. That's important. Are you a victim of the circumstances? Sure. But then you become a survivor, and we've talked about that on the channel, and then you thrive. When you're coming out of survivor mode, you've learned those tactics, right? It's tactical rather than intentional. You do what you have to keep your head above water, right? To feel like you can get your feet on the floor in the morning, or to just carry on in life after crazy things have happened to you. But then you begin to thrive again. So then we have to deprogram all of those survival mechanisms. Then we have to deprogram the self-doubt, the lack of confidence. That we're not pinholed into this little space, this little box of what someone else says we are. Like, there's a realization, and these shifts anymore, I don't think are nearly as dramatic in some ways, right? The internal shifts, thank you, Spirit. The internal shifts aren't dramatic. They're not loud. There's not confetti or fireworks going off. It's the personal realizations that you have within you that become the game changer. That I've lived in these situations, I've had these people in my life, and you just don't realize until years later how much that impact has changed the essence of who you've been. Your essence, your innocence, your ability to love, your ability to live free. Freedom. Freedom isn't just a constitutional right, it's a birthright. Given to you by God, your higher power, whatever you believe in. You being a sovereign being. No longer giving, if somebody wants to do things to you, in whatever way or form that could be, because God knows there's a million of them. I could say you don't take it personally. I don't think that that's the right words for that. But at the same time, you have to realize that they're operating under their own system, likely miserable. For some, maybe you left them like I did and you bruised some ego. Maybe they're miserable and they don't want to see you happy because that means defeat to them. You don't really know what another person is working with on an internal level that causes them to behave the way they do or say the things that they say or whatever it might be. It's not your job to figure that out either. I want to make that clear. Don't spend your days racking your brain trying to figure out why people do what they do. Eventually you'll either see it or you won't. It'll all make sense or it won't. Because again, it's not about them. They've tried to make it about them. But it's not about them. It's about you. It's about what peace means for you. What peace do you need to have in your life, in an area of your life that is calling for order. Order from chaos. I appreciated the fact that those ladies showed up here, more so this morning than I did yesterday because I was pinched for time. But will we ever have peace? Yes. But peace is going to look differently for all of us. Maybe it's peace out of a relationship. Maybe it's peace of mind that you've come as far as you have. Maybe it's peace, a reconciliation of the soul within you for past things. You know, making peace with past mistakes that you've made. You're still human. Give yourself grace. Even if another person is not giving you grace, they haven't walked that mile in your shoes. They haven't been on the receiving end of the shit that you've gone through. It doesn't make them better than you, right? This person is a very better than you attitude, very, you're not as good as me. I remember being called white trash is how he worded it. It was lovely. Speaks to his character. You know, stuff like that. Let them have their opinions, but don't feed them. Don't believe it just because you hear it. Reconcile peace within your soul. Reconcile peace within your heart. Even for the person. Even for the person that has tried to rain hell and terror down on your life. I will forever, again, say this. There are people in this world who are placed here as a part of your journey to remind you what it looks like if you don't evolve. Let them be the example and give thanks to them for that. Not that I'm saying to you, go have this conversation with this person, because it probably won't be well received, right? It's going to be another war in itself. But ultimately, it's an internal thank you, because they've shown you something about yourself. And they've shown you what you'll never do again. I personally made a reconciliation with myself last night. That all the things that I was told, not that I ever looked at that person and believed what they said, right? But you continue to hear it over and over and over and over again. And you're like, well, shit, if I would have not just done this one thing, if I would have said this instead, maybe if I would have done this, it would have been different. No, it wouldn't have been. You are being taken exactly where you needed to be, to have the experience and learn what you needed to learn from that circumstance. Give yourself peace. Give yourself grace. Give yourself love. Give yourself compassion. Again, you are simply a human being, having a human experience. And when we came into this world, God, again, higher power, your parents, the doctor that delivered you, did not hand you an instruction manual and said, this is how you do it. There's not a single person in this world, from the Pope to God himself, who didn't make mistakes. It doesn't matter. Because to share these experiences with you in my own personal life, I sat here and thought, if I address this on camera, even though I've not used names or gotten into super specific details, there was a fear that kicked up in me and said, if he sees this, if this is the thing, could they use it against me? And no. There's again, letting go of the fear that this is my experience from my perspective. And if somebody doesn't like what's being, how do I say this? When what you state is fact and can be proven, just because people don't like it doesn't mean it's not true. I didn't violate anybody's personal autonomy by speaking on this. I didn't name names and places and cities and all of those things. But it's a story, and it's a story of truth. And as they say, the truth shall set you free. So, will we ever have peace? Yes. But you get to choose what that peace looks like for you. What part of your life? Because once you find peace, you then become that ripple effect to every other person you ever talk to. Every other person you share a moment with. You could just say that one thing to somebody and you don't even know, because of the perspective that you have based upon your experience, how that gives them an answer to something they haven't been able to understand in years. So do share. Do share, do talk, do have open dialogue, and take no shit in the process. I had to reinforce some serious boundaries here about a month ago in that situation where name calling, and it's one thing to swear, it's another to swear at somebody, right? It's not the same. That becomes disrespectful. When you point the finger and you go, you are, and you this, and you that, right? They say when you're having communication with your partner or somebody you're trying to reconcile with, never start the statement off with you, because immediately it points the finger, right? When people can't say, you hurt my I say you hurt my feelings, but my feelings are hurt and this is how I feel. Instead they go, you're a psychopath. That shows the lack of emotional intelligence in a person. When you have to start off blaming rather than having open conversation about how you feel, rather than pointing the blame and projection. There's a lot of projection going on right now this week. And you can blame the eclipses. You've got Mars and Scorpio doing its thing. But you have to be able to decipher through that. You have to be able to work through that. Be patient with yourself. Be loving with yourself. Because in those things, you find peace. It's miraculous. It really, truly is. But I think for a lot of people right now, the cycles that we've been through, they're closing. I know they're closing. It's going to look different for everybody, right? We all have different scenarios going on in our lives. But it all leads back to the same thing. And that's an internal peace within us that allows us to move on freely. And where there is peace, there is freedom. So you get to choose what that looks like for you. So I'm going to leave it there. I hope that this video, in whatever capacity, has been helpful to you, me sharing my experience. Thank you to the ladies who did show up here yesterday. Can't remember their names. They were really lovely, though. They were very nice. Cats are playing. But, yeah, I hope it was helpful. I hope you took something valuable from this. Personal reads are open and available. Info is on the channel page, right? So find the email, reach out to me. I hope you all are doing well. I'm sending you so much love, and I look forward to seeing you again. Bye-bye.